So let's go to like
Bitch, diggy, bitch.
9:30, 8:03 Eastern by my watch right now. So we'll do it that. We'll do it like that. And obviously, big subject with the peace in the Middle East. We hope. And that's the genuine truth of it, guys. We hope we can maintain this peace. And I'm going to explain to you why it's we, and explain to you the good guys and bad guys, because there is the reality of that. There's good and bad in this, and the knee-jerk reaction is going to say, most of you be Israel good, Arab countries bad. I'm going to kind of explain the gray zone and why it doesn't. The expression "it takes two to tango," right? Well, Israel and Palestine, whether it's the PLO, whether it's Hamas, whether it's the Palestinian people. Um, I know the Jews don't call them Palestinians and the Christian Zionists don't call them Palestinians. I'm going to call them whatever they want to be called because ultimately it doesn't matter to me. And it shouldn't matter to anybody in here. You don't live there, so it doesn't really matter, uh, what they call themselves. I care about what they do, okay, or what they're not going to do. Well, it takes two to tango, and these two parties have never wanted to dance, as I've said before, okay? And it's pretty disturbing that this is what it takes, this much bloodshed over, just going back since 1967 to uh, get these two groups to hopefully stop killing each other. I'm really, I'm hoping this lasts. Um, it's tough, guys. This is a tough one. It's a very, very hard thing because you've got religious ideology involved in it. You've got, an ethno state. You've got the fact that one of the combatants, one of the antagonists, Israel, is surrounded by Arab countries. I mean, there's a lot here. It's not basic like you might think, right? Let me get some stuff up in the nest and we'll talk about it. So, if you're wondering, first of all, let me get this up. 12:45 a.m., I believe Eastern time. So in the middle of the night last night. And Caroline Levitt puts out President Trump still talking to the press on the way back from Egypt last night. So the dude is unstoppable. None of this would have happened without him. And Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Kushner, say what you want about them. Uh, most of you have a unsavory opinion about Kushner. Fine. So this is not a small thing. There's not a lot of people, and Witkoff evidently is huge in the so. Let's just take a look. Let's pause here. This is why it's my belief, friends, we could never have another politician president. Trump was not a politician. Rubio, put him aside. Okay, as a longtime senator, really a career politician from Miami. Whatever. Guy's doing a great job. I don't think he's ever going to be president. He might be the highest ranking Hispanic American to hold office, but he's not going to be president. So maybe a vice president if he's lucky. So look who's involved in this deal, friends. You've got President Trump. His business record speaks for itself. Witkoff, another real estate guy from New York. Kushner, yeah, shady business family, but these are all businessmen, boardroom guys, commercial real estate, deal makers in the outside world. And they're the ones that brokered the peace greatly, talking to these politicians. Uh, that's not a bad thing, guys. I don't think it really matters so much as to who's closing the deal. It's that hopefully this peace is lasting because it's costing a lot of money and a lot of lives, more importantly. So President Trump's he's up in the nest there, still talking to the press in the middle of the night. Next post, Grace Curley from WRKO in Boston, AM radio. I kind of talk to them. I kind of listen to them from time to time. She's got the left can't cope. Trump broke them so long ago, and now they just live on a hamster wheel of hate and stupidity. A simple quote, "Well done, Mr. President," is too much for these sad, morally depraved lunatics. Pray for them, they need it. Truer words have never been spoken. Truer words have never been spoken. Janet, you got your hand up. Go ahead. What's going on?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in on what you were saying about who put this together, that it really wasn't politicians that came up with the idea of how to do this. Because once the Palestinians have money in the game and they start making money and they have something to lose, then you're going to start seeing a difference about them fighting for what they have to keep it, because now it's their responsibility. Because once they lose, let's say whatever, they fix it up to where start having a resort area along the water, and then trade and other things on their own, whether they have something, a stake in the game, instead of just throwing their people they don't even care about in front of the guns or whatever, that type of thing. That's why I think the Arab countries, Egypt and the other countries told them, this is it, buddy. This is your last chance. Either you do this or it's over. And they believe them. Finally, a group of people got together and decided to stand up and say, we're sick of this shit and we don't want your refugees here. You got to build a place where they can take care of themselves. So if that comes to fruition and stays this way and they start having something to lose, they'll have a stake in the game just like we do. That's all I wanted to add. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yeah, and while let's pivot into that because there's some players involved here in this game. There's some players about who exactly is involved in this piece. Now, Janet said the Palestinians. Now, I think Hamas is basically defunded like an NGO in the United States, like USAID. Whether it was Qatari money, Saudi money, a combination, Turkish Secret Service. Who cares at this point? They're defunded. They're out of business. Okay. If you saw the first letter, the first memo from Hamas or whatever, the Palestinian Authority, uh, when they acknowledged that they were considering about a week and a half ago Trump's peace terms, they acknowledged the fact they're going to have a technocracy, a conglomerate. Of course, the people on the far right, the woke right, hardcore anti-Zionists, which I'm not necessarily against, but the Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson brain rot thing. I've got my own problems with Israel, but mine are based on reality and business, not based on interpretation of the Bible, which is the problem with half of these people on both sides. The stupidity of using a religion to kill other people has never sat right with me, despite my own religious upbringing. I just don't like it. And I don't like hearing people that make a lot of money justify it because we'll get into that in a minute. But who's going to be running Palestine? And yes, I use the word Palestine. I don't like to dehumanize people because if you think that every Palestinian is represented by Hamas, you've been smoking meth again. If anything, they're held hostage by them. They don't agree. They don't like the Jews, but they don't like Hamas either. And when you're a powerless, impoverished goat farmer, or you have a bunch of olive trees to your name and that's it, you don't really have a political stake in the game. So please don't make the calculation, friends, because I want you to be evolved, right? That, Hamas is not the Palestinian people no more than the IDF is the Jewish people. Trust me, there's plenty of secular Jews in Israel that are basically rich European and North American Jews that are there to retire. And they're not, they're not kosher. They're agnostics like Noam Chomsky, Jews like that. There's plenty of they're not in government, they're not in power, I don't think. They're not notable people there. But the state of Israel is not just made up of religious fanatics, like what do you call them? Hasidics or whatever, like people in Brooklyn. It's not like that. It's a lot of secular Jews there. So very complex, not a conversation for today. But I just want to illustrate the point, guys, that not everybody on both sides is on the same page. Like that's the big mistake that people are making. All the Palestinians support Hamas. All the Jews support uh, Netanyahu's Likud party, which is their center right party. Okay, their neocon party, basically. I don't think that's the case at all, guys. 7 million people in Israel. It's a lot of people. I don't think that they're all on board with, there's plenty of left wing Jews in Tel Aviv that don't really want to be bombed, right? That don't want the Golden Dome in use. So, something to think about. We can't get into the heads of all these people, and people on this side of the Atlantic are trying to do that. It's very frustrating. The war is hopefully over. Let's just take the W and not get philosophical and start talking about the Bible and whose land was what, and if the Jews are in Israel have any relation to the tribes of Israel from the old time. I don't want to get into all that. It it's a waste of all of our time. I'm not here to tell you how to interpret religious text. I don't care. I don't care that you don't think there's such thing as Palestine. I do. So I'm going to explain it to you from this angle. There's a lot, the world is a big place, guys. Do you know 70% of the earth is covered by water? I mean, they call us the blue planet for a reason. And think of that, even with 70% ocean covering the spherical earth, there's enough room for 7 billion people and more. So there's plenty of room there for them to stay there uh, in Gaza, in the West Bank. Plenty of room. A lot of space for everybody. No need to crowd. That's part of this deal, keeping them there. Because the mistake, if this was George Bush, you would say, "Oh, sure, Jordan, you could take the 2,000, you could take 200,000, Jordan and Egypt. You take 200,000 women and children. The military-age men will dump off in Berlin or Vienna or Paris or London." That's how the neocons would have done this. Trump is very smart here. As much as the Jews don't want them there, the Israelis, they get to stay there. The good and the bad. He's offering pardons to Hamas day-to-day people. This is a good thing. If these are troublemakers, guys, they don't want them in Cairo. They don't want them anywhere else in Beirut. Let them stay there. Eventually they'll turn into like warlords, or maybe not if Turkey's involved. We'll get into that. Maybe the bad guys will just off each other in Gaza. Who the hell knows? Nothing for you to worry about. Just be grateful they're staying there, even if the Israelis whine about it, that they're staying there and they're not coming to Europe or North America. Just be glad that's happening. You have a lot to be thankful for as an American, that this problem is not getting dumped all over the world. So if you look up in the nest, again, going back to Janet's point from the White House, I'm going to read to you the text of the peace treaty, the Trump Declaration for Enduring Peace and Prosperity. It's short. Bear with me. Quote, "We, the undersigned, welcome the truly historic commitment and implementation by all parties to the Trump peace agreement, ending more than 2 years of profound suffering and loss, opening a new chapter for the region defined by hope, security, and a shared vision for peace and prosperity. We support and stand behind President Trump's sincere efforts to end the war in Gaza and bring lasting peace to the Middle East. Together, we will implement this agreement in a manner that ensures peace, security, stability, and opportunity for all peoples of the region, including both Palestinians and Israelis. We understand that lasting peace will be one in which both Palestinians and Israelis can prosper with their fundamental human rights protected, their security guaranteed, and their dignity upheld. We affirm the meaningful progress uh, We affirm that meaningful progress emerges through cooperation and sustained dialogue, and that strengthening bonds among nations and peoples serves for the enduring interest of regional and global peace and stability." Okay, so who signed? We commit ourselves to a future of enduring peace. Signed by, guys. Take notes. Get a pen out right now, if you and write these names down or type them in your phone. "We commit ourselves to a future of enduring peace. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States of America. Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, President of the Arab Republic of Egypt. Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar. Qatar is going to be very significant in the years to come, guys. Stand by. Last person, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, President of the Republic of Turkey. That is your technocracy running that part of the world now, friends. That is the United States, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey. Why is that significant? Well, Turkey is the third largest military in the world. And they're probably the one, even though they're Central Asian, not the Middle East technically, they're probably the one, and they're in NATO, by the way. A lot of you don't know that. Turkey is in NATO with Europe and the United States. That, excuse me, they are the one army that Israel fears and respects, even more than Iran. Okay. Um, Turkey has allies on both sides of the hem. They're allied with Russia and Syria and Iran, what's left of Iran, and they're also allied with the West. Okay, it's the former Ottoman Empire. I have to tell you guys, the last time there was peace and stability in the Levant in the Holy Land, I'm talking, in other words, where there was no Palestinian Israeli fighting, was when the Turkish were the Ottoman Empire of the 19th century, and it collapsed after World War One. So when they occupied basically a caliphate, like I said last week, basically the Ottoman Empire was a monarchy, but it was a Turkish uh, Islamist caliphate. Not really Islamist, absolutely the Islamic world, but not like Al Qaeda or anything like that. I don't want to give you the wrong idea. They were a monarchy with rules and etc. So that was the last time there was peace, 1918, when the Turkish they know how the Turkish could be very brutal, and they know how to keep uh, all the Arabs in line because they're not Arab, they're Asian, uh, the Turkish people, and the Jews don't fuck with them. So you've got multiple layers here. Why as to why it's important. Qatar, that's where all the money is. Qatar is the second most richest Gulf state after Saudi. I think it's got more money than UAE as well. Their money is very, very important. This is why Trump went and spoke to them. They're going to do the rebuild. So basically, what the anti-Zionists call Palestine is going to be essentially I hate to say it, guys, a global project of Qatar and Turkey, and to a lesser extent, Egypt, maybe us. But the alternative, I'd rather have global. I mean, there's a difference between Gulf state globalism and like the European globalism that I think a lot of people worry about. You know, so it's different. They're brutal when they need to be, and they're effective, and they keep people in line. So that's the story. Write those names down. The Emir of Qatar, Erdogan in Turkey, El Sisi, the Egyptian president, and President Trump. That's the technocracy holding that area together. I don't have fear of Israel doing anything. I think you're still going to have the last holdouts from Hamas maybe firing rockets into Tel Aviv. I don't think it's going to be anything big. It's going to be a very hard piece to maintain, guys. Very hard, very complicated. Lots of people involved. So something to think about. So that's the story on that. We could, guys start putting in mics. I'd like to talk to you about that. The credit goes to President Trump, 100%. Okay, he's the only one that can do anything. Big credit to Marco Rubio, Steve Witkoff, Kushner for stopping this thing. And my favorite part is it's giving both sides. You've got the new um, you've got the Christian Zionists, like basically everybody on Fox News and stuff like that, in the Jewish media, and then you've got the equally obnoxious anti-Zionist right, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, now Marjorie Taylor, as I call her, Marjorie Taylor Massey. and Massey himself, all those people who don't like Israel are now they have nothing to complain about because Trump has broken both sides. Remember, they were saying a year ago, or not even a year ago, 6 months ago, that Netanyahu controlled Trump. And here's the next thing: Netanyahu, who's a very disgusting man, who would have, make no mistake, he would have fought to every last Israeli man, woman, and child. Okay. And so against Iran or Hamas. The guy is not a good person. Stop supporting him. I know he speaks very good English and he seems very Americanized, and he's been in power off and on for 25 years, so you're all familiar with him. He's not a good person, guys. He's proven that. He's really burned the credibility of the state of Israel in Western eyes with his actions. He was attacked. His response was tenfold what Hamas did. Okay. There's proof of that. I mean, he's destroyed the last of Christendom in Palestine. You name it. Uh, the Palestinian Christians and Assyrian minorities in the West Bank. They lost a lot of churches, Christian Orthodox churches in that. Netanyahu has no compassion. Um, he's as bad as Hamas in my opinion. He masks it very well. But I think the Israeli people need. I don't know when their election is. They need to get that Likud party out of there. It's like when. And by the way, my prediction? It Where Israel is right now is a lot how the United States was in 2008 after Iraq and Afghanistan. Bush had the country very war weary, and then we pivoted sadly into Barack Obama. So I do think the next Israeli president is going to be probably very left of center, probably very globalist aligned, uh, because the MO of Netanyahu's coalition governments has been get the United States in a war with Iran at all cost, whatever the cost, and continue to find convenient ways not to make peace with Hamas. Listen, guys, have you ever wondered why? And then I'll get to the hands here. Janet, your hand's up. I'll get to you in a second. Have you wondered why that prior to Netanyahu, it was very easy for the Israelis to make lasting peace with the Kingdom of Jordan and Egypt pretty much since 1967? And he's always said, "Oh, we'll make peace with the Arab countries when we can get, uh, no, I think that his as I said, his modus operandi was never peace. He's a hardcore Israeli nationalist. Now, many of us in here like being called American nationalists. We don't have a blood feud with a neighboring country based on religion like they do. We don't have a blood feud with Mexico because we're Anglo-Saxon and they're Hispanic. So being an American nationalist is a lot different from being an Israeli nationalist because the state of Israel is a ethno state and a theocracy kind of, where its population is quite obviously 99% Jewish. The United States is not 99% Anglo-Saxon. It's not even 99% Christian. So it's an incomparable thing you're doing. American nationalism has nothing to do with what the state of Israel is about. We weren't founded as an ethno state. You know why? Because when we conquered the United States, everybody that was living here was an indigenous red man and woman. So we weren't native to this land. Doesn't mean I'm a leftist by saying that. I'm just acknowledging a fact. All right, things to think about. Janet, go ahead.
Well, I agree with you. And my great grandmother was raised on Indian reservation. So that happens in every single country in the world. Was taken over by a stronger country. That is the way it is. That's reality. And even in other countries, that's happened. But I agree with everything that you're saying. And the fact is, the truth is that these other countries that helped broker this deal hold Hamas accountable and actually put their money where their mouth is when it comes to reprimanding them if they do step out of line, or if they hear about it, or and do something, the peace will last. It's just making sure these people hold themselves accountable. So there's something else behind the scenes that we don't know about, which we should be privy to everything anyways. But honestly, when the money stops for Hamas, they'll stop. They'll move on to something else because there's nothing in it for them. They don't have any,
It stopped.
need in there.
It's
That's
it
right.
it stopped for sure. Yeah, good. Finish up, Jan.
Yeah, it's just like what happened, what we're seeing happen as the money dwindles down in the NGOs and with Doge and everything else from all these, vagina hat wearing people, that were doing all the protesting and stuff a few years back that had our tax dollars paying to pay these people to be bussed in. As that dwindles down, that'll become less. Because what's great about this whole thing is watching real Americans showing up now with the moms and dads and the people of the towns and the state coming in and trying to stand in front of the rioters, to show that, hey, we want ICE to be here to clean up our towns and our state. So, and they're doing it on their own dime. So you can see the difference in the way that people act on who's getting paid to be there and make a fool of themselves, a mockery, because they know there's a lawyer waiting for them if they get arrested to go to jail, and there's hot meals and whatever they need, because this is organized. Whether anybody wants to say, oh, it's just a bunch of dumbasses. Well, it isn't. It's a bunch of people that are in control getting the dumbasses to show up and do their dirty work for them. So that's all I wanted to add. Thank you for letting me speak, and God bless America.
Yeah, I like the whole thank you. I like the whole blessed are the peacemakers. This is very, very significant, my friends. I know this is very obvious to everybody in here. Nobody's lost in the weeds on this, but this whole situation with the peace deal, I mean, none of this would have been possible if Trump didn't get reelected. This was on his to-do list, like Russia and Ukraine and others, and these other 8 or 9 peace deals he's brokered. Even I didn't know Armenia and Azerbaijan were still having a skirmish after many, many years since the fall of the Soviet Union. All of this stuff, you know, uh, Africa as well. Was it the Congo? And I don't remember the other country, but the point still stands. This is an administration of peace, and I think that people are really need to take a minute and appreciate what's going on. And by the way, none of this is perfect. None of this is perfect. You're gonna, the people who call President Trump Zion Don, they're gonna find ways to to minimize what's just happened. People just are perpetually unhappy. And I have to tell you, friends, really since it's been a forever, but the post 9/11 era, the United States has been too locked in and engaged in the Middle East and Central Asia. Iran and Turkey are in Central Asia, not the Middle East, technically speaking, friends. And they're not Arabs. And either, Iranians are Persians. Turkish people are actually descendants of Troy, uh, Trojans. So you have to understand something. It's a very complex part of the world, and the least we're involved with that, in my opinion, other than diplomatic reasons, the better. Uh, there is a reason why many of you were upset President Trump struck Iran over the summer. I think it was in June. Remember, that was World War III. There was a reason for that. I can't speak to the validity of the Iranian nuclear project. Believe it or not, it's just not something I focused on. I always thought it was a red herring. Um, Again, go back, go on YouTube, find a Netanyahu speech to the UN in 2004. He was acting like, within the next couple days, the next calendar days, Iran's gonna have nuclear. He's been the reason why I never liked the guy is because he's the boy who cried wolf. He's been emotionally blackmailing really the British and American people for 20 odd years, guys. I don't know. President Trump says they were ready to go nuclear. I don't fucking know, guys. Sorry about that. I honestly don't care at this point, but he was taking the leverage off the table of Iran being a threat with Operation Midnight Hammer. Yeah, Janet, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add this little thing. Then I'll shut up. I'm sorry. But it's the one of the reasons why Hegseth and Trump and a few others decided to change it from the Department of Defense to Department of War is because they were using the word defense to make it more suitable to go around the world and put money here and put our troops there and this and that and then whatever, stretching our hand across the world and using our money to pay for it is because it sounded like we were there to stop them, anything from escalating, which we see it didn't help, did it? When you take the money away and you tell them, we're not going to come in here and fix this mess for you. You guys need to fix it. We're the Department of War. And what we are for is to fight for our own country. So that's what we're going to start spending our money, basically, and straightening up our mess that we have in our own military and start making these other countries defend themselves like they should be, because we have to do ours by ourselves. Now, the only country that isn't going to have to do that is Canada, because they have a big warm snuggie of America wrapped around them and they know no one's going to mess with them. So, but basically everyone else is on their own, unless, we're going to lose something like oil or some other reason why we need to help defend this other country. But basically, that's what Trump's doing. And I'm loving it because we don't have other countries running to our aid. We're paying for everybody's crap. And I'm sick of that. I think we should keep our money for our veterans and our homeless and our country to be running and help our people instead of spending it at other countries. So all of this goes hand in hand, and getting these countries to stand up for their own and to stop the war in their regions is great. I'm loving it. And I think Trump is the only person that could have ever done this. And I'm thankful for it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
So the situation is as follows, I think, Janet and everybody else. We're still going to be spending money over there. But I think you're going to have to look at the model of how Trump's dealing with NATO and EU, where, well, particularly NATO, where he's selling weapons to NATO or to the European Union, where they can pass off to Ukraine, for example. We're still going to be involved financially. What that looks like, I can't tell you right now, but it's not going to be a commutation of spending it all. We have vested interest there. Um, it just in keeping the peace, and that's going to take time and money. Hopefully, not a lot of money. Uh, we've already appropriated an enormous amount of spending with the one big beautiful bill. So we're spending a lot of money in this country, rightfully so, over the next 3.5 years, the remainder of Trump's term. So I'm not too worried about that. I'm more so I want to see how this technocracy, as we said, works with uh, Turkey being involved, Qatar. Um, I think the Qataris believe if they have endless amounts of money, if they are financially responsible for the rebuild of Gaza, that that will be a deterrent for Israel to mobilize again. But the important thing is you have to, as Trump did. This is what I think Bibi was most mad about. He didn't want the Hamas high command pardoned. And I'm thinking to myself, what he did was save them from martyrdom, because what do you think the Israelis would have done to El Sisi, not El Sisi, Mahmoud Abbas? That's the leader of Hamas. What do you think they would have done to him? Okay, cut his fucking head off. That's not solving any problem. He's going to get his in the afterlife, guys. Doing that would just mess everything up here. That's why if they're offering pardons to the high command of Hamas, killing these guys does nothing. It just makes matters worse. So you keep them alive, you take them out of power, you put Qatari money there, which is an endless supply of money, by the way. You have the threat of the Turkish military again, who Israel fears and respects, and then you have Egypt, who's kind of the middleman because they get along well with the state of Israel. Maybe they're more on the diplomatic optics, public relations side of things. Then you got President Trump in the background, of course. These are all very, very significant things. So I can't say we're not going to spend any money over there right now. I just think it's our we brokered this peace. We can't wash our hands and walk away with it and say, okay, Arabs and Jews, stop. This is going to be a lasting peace for the entire Middle East. And I think that's part of the problem is you're not going to see American military there because uh, that just gets people stirred up. And I think President Trump's done a really, really good job of explaining to the world that, okay, a lot of you don't like Qatar, a lot of you don't like Turkey, but you know what? They will listen to them. They won't listen to me. They won't listen to the Israelis, of course. That part of the world, guys, you really have to not look at it like you look at like the United States relationship with England or France or Germany even. It's not like that over there. It's a completely different way of doing business, a completely different way of doing diplomacy. Half of these countries that were there yesterday, they call themselves Islamic states. So they're theocracies. Some of them bloody, some of them not. Some of them warlike, some of them not. You know, uh, the United Kingdom, okay, it's a monarchy. They don't call themselves the United Anglican Destroyers. We're the United States of America, not the United States of millions of regular people who have guns. You have to understand something. These countries over there have their religious ideology in the title of their kingdom or their republic or whatever. They wear their religion and their military lineage on their shirt. We do too, to a lesser extent, but we're not the United States of Christian patriots. You know what I mean? I hope you're following me here. I'm trying to make this example. They do business a different style over there. It's he who has the most money and the most guns, you know, and the most swords wins. That would be Saudi Qatar over Palestine 8 days a week, guys. Make no mistake. Because they're not, the Qataris aren't going to put up with this shit. Like I said, the Hamas breaks off into these little warlord tribes and, launches, leftover rockets into Tel Aviv. The Qataris are going to hunt them down, cut their heads off, and probably cut their uh, families' heads off to send a message. We're not going to do that. The United States, we're more civilized. I don't know if civilized works in that part of the world, though. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the last 2 years. I'm not seeing a lot of humanity in Gaza on either side. So maybe that's what works, guys. Violence is a very strong deterrent. We can't do that because as the United States, we have to be just different for a million reasons I don't need to get into. Like you're all smart enough here to know why. We can't be going around threatening, Hamas warlord groups that have broken off. You refuse to surrender, we'll just hunt you down and kill you and cut your head off. Because that's what they'll do. And Turkey is very capable of the same thing. Their version of uh I don't know what they call them in Turkey. I can't remember. Their version of special forces is lethal, guys. Lethal. So let them be the violent deterrent, if you will. All right. Let me let me get into tariffs quickly because this kind of relates to what's going on with the peace deal and all that, or the signed peace deal. President Trump's been using tariffs, as you've noticed, as leverage for a long time now. His entire administration. Very controversial subject for MAGA people, or people just aren't, they're not comfortable. They believe it causes inflation. They believe it, prices get passed on to the consumer. Well, he's used them very successfully on an international level to, basically, what how Trump uses is applying tariffs globally. Doesn't matter if it's a friendly country like France, or a adversary like China. What tariffs are basically sanctions that you could put into place quickly. You know how anytime there's an escalation in war or whatever, we put economic sanctions, like we stopped all relationship with Afghanistan on 9/11. Obviously, we stopped all our relationship with North Korea since the end of the 1952. That all that's logical, I hope, for all of you to follow. Economic sanctions are part of that. We don't do any commerce with North Korea or Iran, etc. Okay, obviously Iraq in the 90s, you get that. But tariffs now are basically uh, a more effective way of doing sanctions. And it's not that we want to go to war with these countries. It's more, the mere fact that we need to get something at. We're trying to obtain a goal, achieve a objective here. Okay, because of unbalanced trade, but also a lot of these countries, like the reason why the European Union was quick, in my opinion, quick to sign a very comprehensive trade agreement, is because they need the American, uh, they need the stuff that Raytheon and Boeing makes. They need, top of the line military equipment, and they'd rather pay a 15% tariff than a 500% tariff. Who knows? President Trump could be that crazy. um, but I want to read you something quickly. Uh, in regards to tariffs. It's from an economic letter I subscribe to, and I think this is, what are the administration's goals, and how does this relate to not just what's going on in Gaza, but all the skirmishes globally. So the administration's goals, that it's Trump's intention. It's to shape the behavior of other countries and collect some much needed revenue for the Treasury regarding tariffs. Um, it's revenue that can be returned to the American people in a manner that helps neutralize the cost of tariffs to consumers, especially less affluent ones. President Trump's goal, of course, is not to destabilize markets or hurt economic growth. At some level, from an investment perspective, it perhaps comes down to confidence in Trump's decision making and his ability to balance market instability with policy objectives. Okay, so our unfair trade balance with basically every country in the world. He's trying to fix that, as well as using them on adversary nations like China, etc., to get them to uh, de-escalate, right? Economic warfare, basically. Investors who de-risked in April, that's when the tariffs came in, Liberation Day, assuming Trump would make a massive policy mistake, have paid a high price. The S&P 500 has advanced more than 30% since bottoming on April 8th. April 2nd was Liberation Day. April 8th, a week later, basically. Excuse me. Investors who dumped stocks on Friday were likewise punished in the form of a missed opportunity, albeit on a smaller scale. This was this last Friday when he talked about the 100% tariff on China. The market tanked on Friday afternoon temporarily. Our suggestion to investors, that's all of you, you're investors whether you know it or not, is to pay careful attention to Trump's words, not media accounts of them, and to stay anchored to the big picture objectives of the administration, like strong economic growth, technological advancement, and geopolitical stability. What the administration accomplished in the Middle East can reasonably be described as a foreign policy miracle. All right, let me read that to you again, my friends. What the Trump administration accomplished in Gaza can reasonably be described as a foreign policy miracle. When it comes to the Trump White House, the process may be messy and unusual, but the outcomes are what is most important. This is what the panicans need. They need to start reading this newsletter, guys, because Trump is using the tariffs, guys, for the short term and the long term simultaneously. All right. That's the difference here. And I'm going to get pivot into a little economic stuff briefly. Okay. I want to give you a little quick history, guys, because there still seems to be, I think a lot of people don't understand the concept of a tariff. They just accept, well, oh, well, it might improve economic stability or remedy a trade imbalance with another country. It's just ultimately going to be a tax passed on the consumer. Not necessarily. And that not necessarily, guys, is in all caps and bold and underlined. It's not that simple. All right. And you really need to stop. You need it's not a one-off thing. They either cause inflate, they're either a tax passed on to the consumer or they're not. Neither one of those is correct, guys. There is a gray zone. I'm big into the gray zone, i.e., the truth. So let me explain to you, in my opinion, uh, what tariffs are going to do. I just gave you a good explanation of how they affect geopolitical issues. Let me give you an explanation, with Gaza in particular and China and everybody else. Let me give you an explanation of how it is impacting you on a domestic level. So for all of us, uh, so you probably heard that President Trump wants to do two things with the debt. I mean, with the tariff revenue, he wants to pay down debt, and he wants to possibly, maybe, kind of, sort of give a dividend to the people of the United States. Okay, cynical people will call that a bribe. I'm going to explain to you why I think it actually will work. Excuse me, because it's not going to be a lot of money. Maybe 1,000, 2,000 bucks. So this is President Trump's quote from just October 2nd. Not even 2 weeks ago. Quote: "We're going to do something. We're looking at something. Number one, we're paying down debt because people have allowed the debt to go crazy. We'll pay back debt, but we also might make a distribution to the people, almost like a dividend to the people of America." Um, so there's approximately 340 U.S. citizens, guys, but only about 150 million like individual households. Okay. If $1,000 tariff rebate check were sent to every U.S. citizen, so it would roughly cost the Treasury about 340 billion. That's approximately the full amount of the current tariff collection. So since April, we've accumulated about, we'll say, 340 billion dollars. Okay, so that's sitting in the Treasury, hasn't been dispersed yet. So if these tariff dividend checks of $1,000 were sent to just like tax-paying households, so it's, in other words, it seems unlikely that he's going to give a check to a minor. So it would be people 18 and up. College students that live at home, all of you that work full time, blah blah blah. Um, if that's the case, we could probably send closer to 2,000 if we're just doing it to tax-paying adults, right? So yeah, 340 million people. That includes a lot of children. So the assumption here is he's not going to send them a check, because they're not spending money into the economy. Their parents are. They need it, right? Uh, so if you take into account Trump's like desire to direct most of this tariff revenue towards deficit reduction, an annual payment of tariff dividends to the American people of like $1,000, which would be about 150 billion a year, that's more likely because he wants to use the majority of that money to pay down the debt, obviously. This is the inflation offset, guys. So, I'm glad, this is recorded. If you guys are listening to this not live, let me know if you have any questions about this or if you disagree with my logic. Because I really think I've thought about this and I wrote some stuff down here. I think this is the best way I can explain it to people. Okay. Um, so the major criticism of tariffs in general is that they are a tax on consumers, like I said earlier. Why is that? Now, importers operate on really thin margins, okay? They can't simply absorb whatever tariff Trump is putting on the product or products, okay? Some of them can, but most of them cannot. So the additional cost that they have to pay will get dumped into the price of the product that you're trying to buy. Okay, I don't think that's controversial. I think that's very logical, right? Um, so to the extent that like tariffs are invisibly priced in goods, a lot of people will call this like a regressive form of taxation. Okay, for the haters, they say tariffs are a tax passed on to the American people. So it's kind of a regressive form of taxation because like people that don't have a lot of money or lower income consumers, as the Wall Street Journal calls them, they'll spend a larger percentage of their income on things like food and their car and clothing. Okay. Um, but by that same token, guys, and this is important, lower middle class people, lower income consumers, they spend less overall than rich people just because they have less money. Ding ding, is a light going off? So let me like expound upon that. So if a lower middle class household spends like $5,000 per year on anything they buy that are affected by tariffs, again, food, clothing, vehicles, we'll say, and you're assuming like a 15% average tariff rate, which seems to be Trump's wheelhouse. He loves that 15%. People are getting so much spam calls, guys. I gotta put this on do not disturb in a second. I apologize. Let me start again. So like uh if a poor family spends 5 grand a year on goods affected by tariffs that they buy, and there's a 15% average tariff on all these products, regardless of what country they come from, it's going to be funding about a seven. It's going to be funding $750 of tariff collections. Okay, so say all the stuff that poor people buy at Walmart has a 15% average tariff rate on it, and a poor middle class family spends about 5 grand a year on these things. They're going to be funding $750 collections. Okay, that's assuming that the importer puts 100% of whatever tariff Trump has on their product. Okay, so in English, what does that mean? This is wicked important. Basically, their inflation penalty, the poor people of this country, is about 750 a year. That's guys, that's nothing. That's a car payment. I understand there's poor people in this country, and that's a lot of money. I'm just telling you, from an economic standpoint, that's nothing. That's peanuts. So now you know Trump's so $750. So if he gives them $1,000 check, won't that offset all the 5 grand a year they spend at Walmart on clothing and stuff? Hello? Am I making sense now? This is the shit that people aren't telling you. They're so superficial. They just say it's a regressive tax, it's passed on to the consumer and blah 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 blah, and all this other dumb shit. I wish people took the time to like think about things. And you know what? These people that are having this comment, they've never been poor. They don't know shit about anything. They don't. Poor people have less money, so they spend less. Hell, do you know who's being impacted by the tariffs the most? Rich people at the country club because they have more money and they spend more. People that have, there's a lot of Mormon families that have a lot of money that have 8 or 9 children. The Romneys and stuff of the world, they're getting bent over by Trump's tariffs more than anybody. It's not impoverished people that have no money. If you have no money to spend, how are you being affected by tariffs? Can somebody grab a mic and explain to me where I'm wrong in this? Because maybe I am, and maybe I'm missing something, and you guys are like, this guy needs to uh, not crash out and listen to what I have to say because he's got this all wrong. How can tariffs be a tax on poor people when poor people don't have any money to spend? A poor person is not going to afford a $50,000 car just like they're not going to afford a 65,000. What the fuck is the difference? They can't afford it anyway. Who cares if there's a 15% tariff on BMWs from Germany? They're not buying them anyway. They're buying a shitbox Ford Focus with 180,000 miles on it that's being held together by duct tape and bubble gum. Can somebody explain this crap to me that that where are they getting that it's hurting poor people? I just gave you that. Say a family spends 5 grand a year on shit at Walmart. I just gave you the calculation. 15% average tariff on all that Chinese shit they're buying at Walmart. That's $750 a year added to their 5 grand that they spend in a year in 12 months at Walmart. If Trump gives them $1,000, they're back at 2022 levels of Walmart pricing. I don't know. Are you following this, guys? Please tell me you are. This is significant, and I want you guys to understand it. Yes, Gunny, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, yeah, if they're paying tariffs at 15% or whatever because they're going to Walmart and buying shit that China's like ripping us off with because it's cheaper. Well, now all of a sudden it's not cheaper. So, okay, well, maybe they go to their local downtown store and buy the comparable item that costs now the same as the Chinese shit in Walmart. So, well, what does that do? That helps our small businesses. That takes away Walmart's teeth. That's actually a good thing.
Yeah, it is exactly, Gunny. Let me just finish this up here. So actually, let's pause here. So the tariffs worked because they basically became economic sanctions on global superpowers like the European Union, Japan, South Korea, blah blah blah, everywhere else, and they're working on a domestic level. So explain to me how this tariff thing was bad, guys. We can't live with billions of dollars in trade imbalances with other countries. I know we're the world's biggest consumer as a government and domestic market. That doesn't mean we need to have a $58 billion trade imbalance with Canada, for example. It's more than that. Trump says 200 billion. I think it's around 100 billion. I think he's exaggerating a little. There's nothing they make that we can't make. We compete directly with them, like you said last week to Carney. They make cars, we make cars. They have oil, we have oil. Well, why do we have a trade imbalance? It should be on par. We should zero out that trade imbalance. It's not about being an asshole to these other countries. It's just reality, guy. People, here's a problem. People on this app, Republican and Democrat alike, like you said, I'm going to give you the strengths of MAGA, of the right political realm of this country. We have a lot of ex-military, which is good because they can explain to civilians what is and what is not, with their deployments and stuff, the reality on the ground. We have some lawyers, which are good, that have, clerked but we don't have enough economic people. That is really the soft underbelly of MAGA. There aren't enough economists on this app explaining. Crypto guys are not economists. Everybody, all right. Guys who are trying to sell you a MAGA NFT don't know the stuff that I know. Okay? And I don't know a lot, but I know more than them. With pen and paper, I just wrote this out, not even a page of notes. And I'm not a smart guy. Guys, I was a BC student in high school. I didn't graduate with high honors. I didn't graduate cum laude in college. I'm not, I had to go to the library till midnight to study. I was not one of these people that could just ace exams. But what I am is I'm a tenacious reader. And when I find stuff like it that's useful, um, I can help explain to other people. Because a lot of people, this shit is not interesting at all, guys. I like it because I always liked reading about the economy. So 1 page, handwritten notes by yours truly. This is all it took. I looked at a book I had. I looked at, none of this is chat GPT. Basic math, guys. You don't even need a calculator for this. You can calculate 15% to something. It's easy. Okay. Let me just continue here really quick. Then we'll get some more speakers up here. The main point of tariffs, guys, is not to impose any hidden taxes on any of us, rich or poor. That's what I'm getting at. It's kind of like to redirect the demand for people to produce, for companies like American companies, domestic companies to produce. They'll have the need to hire more American workers because it won't be financially feasible for them to hire foreign workers. When a tariff is in place, guys, he's got the potential to achieve his industrial policy goals, which are agriculture, the auto industry. That 25% steel and aluminum tariff, guys, that is not going anywhere. Okay. I don't know how he could craft that into legislation. That's not going anywhere. A lot of people think when USMCA gets renegotiated next year that that's going away. That's what's making this country rich, guys, is that we're producing our own steel and aluminum. And to supplement the growing domestic market, that is the most important tariff. That 25% steel and aluminum tariff, guys, is going nowhere. Okay. So that's really bad news for Mexico, China, India, Canada. That 25% is going nowhere. Full stop. If in fact he has to put that into legislation to make it permanent law in this country. It's going to help JD Vance out a lot in 2028 if he has this in his back pocket. So in summary, guys, affluent, i.e. rich asses, affluent consumers, they're bearing the brunt of all these tariffs. It's not poor people. And this goes to the simple concept of money. Who has money in this country? Rich people. Who doesn't have money? Poor people. Okay? Like I said, I like to handwrite stuff and not type it out. Let me just look, because sometimes when I'm writing fast, my handwriting sucks when I'm writing fast. Let me just make sure I got all this. Okay, I talked about that. Then I'm going to get to the ML you dropped. I'll let Gunny go and then ML because he had trouble connecting. Is the housing market. Okay. And we have a huge disparity in that. So this chart I downloaded, it's the house price index. Okay. And what the house price index does is it tracks the average price of an American home. And that's ballooned 50% in value over the last 5 years, so since the pandemic. I mean, it's good news for homeowners, particularly the baby boomer population, but it's terrible news for young Americans that are trying to get out on their own and buy their first home. We have a really, really big disparity in the generations now, where basically 73% around that. So basically 3/4 of the housing wealth in this country is monopolized by the boomer generation. This is a big problem, friends. And I'm not going to be morbid and say, well, eventually the boomers are going to die out. That's not the goal here. We're not waiting for people to die. We're not diabolical, sick people. We have to figure out a way in which it is so top heavy with people 62 to 75 that have all the wealth and housing in this country. They have an enormous amount of equity in their homes. It's very problematic, guys. This is going to be very hard to solve because you can't just make old people sell their house. They're just sitting by, consolidating their assets and watching their net value rise by the year. Whether they did very well when Biden was in office, they're doing even better now with President Trump. I don't think the Federal Reserve cutting the interest rates alone is going to help that. Anyway, let me pause there. Gunny, why don't you finish up and then I'll go to ML and everybody else.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind you that it was like 4 or 5 days ago, China put out those international letters to like all the countries in the world because of the tariffs that we're putting on them, and because Donald Trump said he was going to put another 100% tariffs on them if they don't stop fucking around. Well, they wrote all these letters and they're like, okay, well, we're going to do all this bad shit with the stuff we produce that you need, like magnets and rare earth minerals and da 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 da. So I mean, the hand is so tight around their throats in China right now that they're their economy is going to crash. They're gonna lose it all, and that's right where we need them. So that's a good thing. Just saying.
Yes, ma'am, it is. Remember, China, guys, is a one-trick pony. They're export, export, export. If that gets fucked with anyway, that their economy cannot sustain that. It's not a communist version of America. There are 2 billion people in mainland China, probably more. Okay? And they have to keep those people working. They have to keep them working so they can afford their bowl of rice a month that they feed them. And by the way, Russia's also a one-trick pony. They're an oil exporter. We'll get to that soon. Many of you don't believe me. I don't care if you don't believe me. I don't care if you disagree with me. I've done the research. You can't go on ChatGTP and fact check me, guys. You have to go back to since the fall of Tsar Nicholas. Okay, Russia's export wheelhouse is oil. Okay, a lot of people think Russia's an Eastern Hemisphere version of Canada, and they're this natural resource rich massive country that exports all these and they don't. Oil, oil, and more oil. They're more like Saudi than they are North America. ML, go ahead.
Oh my gosh, you're going to go to me now. Gads. Good morning. Well, we're going to have a much longer. I could talk for like at least half an hour on each of your topics, but obviously I'm not going to do that here. You'd gone past the peace deal thing, but I wanted to revisit.
That's okay. That's fine. Anything. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to revisit that quickly because I'm getting ready for the punch bowl to do my Benjamin Netanyahu. This is Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. I'm not very happy with the agreement signed by my boss, President Trump. And anyway, it was it was funny that, and we called it, Gads. We called it a few weeks ago that the peace deal wouldn't be between Israel and Palestine, because I equate them to siblings, like brothers who will always want to fight and kill each other. And so it finally took the adults to step in. And like I said, we discussed this a few weeks ago. It wouldn't be Hamas or Palestine signing the agreement. It would be the boss, someone who steps up to be the boss of Palestine, which happens to be Qatar now. So it's really like the two adults stepped in, and Trump has the power to keep Israel in check and is the parent. And now Qatar has stepped up and he's going to keep Palestine in check. And the two adults sat at the table. Isn't it funny that this war, not funny, but after years of this war, sitting there at the table signing the agreements weren't the two parties engaging in the war. It was the parents at the table. It was Trump and Qatar signing the agreement, saying, okay, we finally sent the kids to their rooms. They're grounded. No, Israel doesn't control the United States. Israel is like a manipulative child who got away with doing a few manipulations here and there. And finally, the parents said, forget it. This is enough. Go to your room. You're grounded. So that's my take on it, Gads. That's my take on it. We called it 2 weeks ago. We said Qatar is going to step in and put their thumb on Palestine. And that's what it takes. Because Hamas and Israel, well, did you know that, I just found this out. Benjamin Netanyahu is not the president of Israel. He's the prime minister. There's a president that no one ever hears about. Isaac Herzog. Where the hell is he, right? Anyway, Netanyahu and Hamas both have been acting like spoiled, angry children, and finally they got sent to the rooms and they're grounded. And the adults stepped up and they signed the agreement. So I think it'll last as long as and only Trump could do that with Israel. So what happens in the future when Trump's not president, I don't know. But for now, it'll last for now, I think, Gads. As long as, and so, and this thing in Idaho, I wanted to talk about midterms, but maybe you're not going there right now. You're talking tariffs and, yeah, you're right on the money, Gads. You know that Russia, I think the GDP per person, like the average wage of a Russian is $15,000 a year. And all they've got is oil. So they're not rich. They're not a rich country. And all they've got is oil. So I agree with you on that one. And yeah, you were talking geopolitics, Turkey. You know that Turkey, it's interesting. Turkey and Russia are two countries where the Western third is in Europe. Did you know that? In Turkey, like Istanbul is a point where west of that is officially Europe and east is Asia. And that's almost the case in Moscow. It's close to that dividing line between Europe and Asia. And they're both Israel. And so you talked about nationalism, Gads. I heard your comment and why you consider Israel to be nationalist and the United States is not in that same regard. I think we need different terms because I think Americans are nationalist, the America First people. But Israel isn't really nationalist. Under Netanyahu, they're more imperialist. They're expansionist, right? And so is Russia. So it's very interesting, the similarities between the approaches of Putin and Netanyahu. They both want to expand territory. Whereas, like you said, the United States doesn't go around trying to conquer new lands. You're not imperialist, you're nationalist. And I would call Putin and Netanyahu imperialists. So anyway, we've got a lot more to discuss on the midterms and what's happening in Europe and the way you're impacting politics here. But I'll let you get to the next hands. And I wanted to say hello to Jeanette from French-speaking Louisiana. I think we should always refer to her as Jeanette.
Yes, that makes sense. Janet, how do you like that for a nickname? Jeanette.
Jeanette.
Janet, I think she
Yeah,
likes
go ahead, guys. I mean, there's a lot to discuss regarding what's happening with
Well,
division
right.
on the right. It's a huge world. Trump is changing the Western world. Obviously, he's totally transforming and changing the whole Western world. All of Europe is like, we feel safe now getting rid of woke and calling that all out. We feel safe because Trump's doing it. And so all of Europe, you're watching it, right? I'm sending you the information. All of Europe is going populist conservative. It's trending everywhere, as long as Trump is there. So anyway, that's a big
hopefully
topic.
they can win elections. Hopefully they can win elections though, because
they're coming up. Yeah, exactly.
France is the perfect example. Le Pen's run like 3 times and gotten close,
Yeah.
but not close enough. So
Yeah.
we got to have another Western European country. I know Czech Republic and Hungary are, and I think Slovakia too are, but we need to flip a France, a Portugal.
Yeah.
That's where it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, it's got to be a big enough thing, and like you know that it's a coalition situation. So if the Populist Party doesn't get over 50%, then the lefties gather up into a coalition and keep them out, and that's what happened in France. But anyway,
100%.
Keep going here. We got a lot to discuss, but go ahead with your other.
Well, you brought up Qatar because I've been talking in ML space about that. Now, here's the thing. I think American people or Western people are slow. Susie, you're on deck. They're slowly coming around to the Gulf states the last 10 years. Now, the World Cup was in Qatar a couple years ago. Everybody who has money, fame, and fortune is wintering in Dubai. Okay, that's in United Arab Emirates, also a Gulf state. Okay, also you have the situation. What was Trump's first visit in his first term? He went to Saudi Arabia, did the sword dance with the prince and his cohort. What's another big step in that direction? The Abraham Accords. You had Oman, all the Gulf states, UAE that now have commercial flights into Israel and vice versa. Excuse me. I think Western people are coming around. What was Trump's big speech several months ago? He's not trying to stop their way of life. That's just see again, this is the Bush mentality. You want to tell the Saudis, don't have your women in niqabs and hijabs. Don't have basically slaves from the third world, Sudanese people. We can't change an ancient culture like that. We don't approve of it. We just have to live with it, guys. But the prince, the emirs, they don't like American president cowboys going over there and telling them, don't be Sunni Islam. Uh, don't do this with your money. Don't do that. That's a very quick way to get click ignore on their end. I think Trump is learning it. I really hope we learn it too. We don't approve of how they do things, guys. We understand it. We don't approve of it. We can't change the world. We can't. The problem is there's been too many people that have been less than honest with pliable minds, thinking that we could change the Islamist countries, whether they're in the middle, the Levant, that's Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine, or fucking the Gulf states. Good luck. Not going to happen, guys. It's just not in my lifetime, not in yours either. That doesn't mean I approve of it. Okay? There's a big distinction there. But it's very, very important that we're involved with that part of the world because they have a lot of oil and they have a lot of money. You can't put them on the sideline in diplomacy. Money doesn't buy everything, guys. Doesn't buy happiness, but I'm going to tell you, when it comes to geopolitics, it makes everything a lot easier. The minute Qatar got involved, Hamas got emasculated. What does that tell you? All right, Susie, go ahead.
Sorry, I am here. I just needed my phone went to sleep. The thing that yeah, we don't agree with what their way of life and the whole burqa thing and the whole I mean, there's just a lot wrong. But we have to make it, and Trump is going about it the right way. The money, the money, the money, because every country wants economic prosperity. And if you have economic prosperity, some of that crap goes by the wayside. Look at what's going on in Saudi Arabia. They have loosened up considerably from just 20 years ago. When you saw Trump and you saw, him visiting Saudi Arabia and the women, there's no burqas. That one ambassador, my God, she was gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. The dress she was wearing, a whole 9 yards. But what we really do need to be careful of is some of these Islamic radicals, and we see them in Europe, we see them in the UK. They want Sharia law. These are the people that we really need to be careful of. And it's happening here as well. So at some point, Texas, the governor said, no, we're not doing Sharia law here. Not happening. And by the way, it's against our Constitution as well. We don't kill, we don't do honor killings of our daughter because, she looked at a dude. So we have to be really careful about that. because they have invaded us, and it's no bueno. And they've done it slowly. And because we don't want to discriminate against people, blah, 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 well, we have to be really careful of that. Now, going back to tariffs and poor people, absolutely. And some of them, they don't even shop at Walmart. They're in the Goodwill. They're in, all these secondhand stores, consignment shops or whatever, getting things even cheaper. And yet they're driving beat up cars and taping it together with duct tape and all of that. So I absolutely agree with you. But the middle class, being in a blue state, we are literally being it doesn't look like, see, when you're on this West Coast and we have these radical policies of tax and spend and fees up the yin yang, like we're just getting ready now to do a referendum for the latest nightmare that co-tax has given us, again, despite the fact that 95% of the people and polls are saying, don't do this. Well, now we have to do a referendum, which means put it on the ballot, and we need to obtain 100,000 signatures in 30 days because she has not signed this bill yet. She has until November 12th to sign it. And then that gives us literally 30 days to gather 100,000 signatures to get rid of this. And this is what's going on the West Coast. It is a nightmare. Nobody on the West Coast is feeling the Trump effect. We don't have lower gas prices. We still have inflation. Our eggs are still expensive. And so it's giving the illusion that it's all Trump's fault. It's all the Trump tariffs. It's all his policies, blah, blah, blah. But people are waking up here on the West Coast saying, no. Why is it my friends in the East have $2 gas and we're still up over $4? Why is that happening? It's a nightmare. But it's a nightmare of the making of these blue states. And I don't know what it takes for a state to go into receivership, but I'm all over it. Because what these people are doing on the West Coast is like insanity. And those that can leave are leaving, and they have left. But our population appears to be stable, like we're not losing people. Why? Because we imported everybody from every other country. Not only that, because of our loosey-goosey drug laws and homeless policies, like we give you tents. We support all of this. We give you needles and we give you all of this. Never mind that you die 15 minutes later. And I've literally seen that happening, not in person, on video, where, these kindly people who facilitate drug use, hand them needles. 15 minutes later, they're doing CPR on the dude in the middle of the sidewalk. So anyway, I kind of went off in a different direction, but you are right on. The poor people are too poor to notice. The middle class on the West Coast, though, is getting squeezed and they're leaving. And they literally, what they do? Texas will put their homeless people on a bus and send them to us. Oh, thank you. Because we'll take any kind of, problem for whatever reason. Doom loop. Let's go into receivership. Please, let's go bankrupt.
Well, you got to remember the Pacific Northwest is as unfixable as California, New York,
Yep.
Massachusetts. I mean, they're not going to. That's the sad reality. But at least you know that, which is good. I know a lot of people who live out there probably. Those are states you can't vote your way out of it. Just like, guys, I mean, it's not blackpilling. Just like the Democrats in Mississippi have no hope of having power, or the Democrats in Wyoming have no hope of having power because there's like four of them. You have to make that acknowledgement on as in MAGA on the. I mean, there are some states that Massachusetts, guys, will never be red. It's never been red since 1776. So it's not going to change. That's all right. We can't go 50 for 50 in our states. It would be nice, but there's a handful of states. Oregon's one of them. Washington State, California, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, these Vermont. You think Vermont's ever
Can
going to
I
go red? Yeah, quickly,
can I
because
just interrupt?
I gotta wrap this up, Susie. Yeah, good. I'm about
I
done
will
myself.
never say never, ever, because people aren't waking up in this state. In fact, even Democrats are looking around going, holy crap, what the hell? They see what's going on. They see our businesses leaving. So I will never say never, in particular because I'm a woman of faith. And I have great faith that there are enough intercessors praying that things can and will change. So I'll never say never, just so you know.
Well,
That's
no,
why
I
I'm
mean
not leaving.
that's great. No, you shouldn't leave, but I want those prayers to manifest, because if people are seeing what's going on in Portland and they still think that that state's salvageable, when you have the governor, I've got to tell you guys on a separate note, I'm going to do a space about this next week. What's going on in Illinois and well, Chicago and Portland in particular right now is the absolute same thing, no hyperbole intended or here at all, as what the southern states were doing in 1861. They were basically making the statement that the sovereign state of South Carolina could ignore federal law. That's exactly what's going on in Portland. And it's not a situation where you have a blue city in a purple state or a red state. Oregon is deep blue. And it's a very, very dangerous thing. Not that we can't handle it. I'm just saying it's incredibly dangerous in Oregon right now when you have a governor and a mayor that are in full insurrection mode. Okay, this isn't, I know that word gets thrown around a lot, insurrection, because of January. No, this is, guys, this is 1861 level shit that these Democrat politicians in Oregon are doing, in Illinois. This is what led to the attack on Fort Sumter in April of 1861. Okay, it's not good, and we need to squash it. And you need to be very, very comfortable with people on your side of the aisle saying this federal overreach. It is not, but their philosophy, guys, was wrong. Just like it was wrong in the 1950s, or I'm sorry, the early 1960s, when public schools and colleges were desegregated. And in Alabama, George Wallace would not let black students into a public high school that had been recently integrated. And President Kennedy called and federalized the National Guard. These people are Confederates. Just because J.D. Pritzker is in the North in Chicago, and I don't even know who the mayor is of Portland. He's a criminal, whoever he is or whoever she is. These people might as well be Confederates in 1861. They're doing the exact same shit. And it's not going to end well for them, guys, because the federal government uh, has the leeway to take care of this problem. Yeah, Gunny, go ahead. You'll be the last speaker, okay?
Yeah, I just want to say I looked it up, and in 1984, when Ronald Reagan won his re-election, there was one state, Wisconsin, that voted for Mondale and
Minnesota,
DC.
Minnesota. Wasn't it
Okay,
Minnesota?
yeah, well, it's the one to the left of Illinois, but it was that state and it was DC, and that was it. Everybody else voted red, including Massachusetts. So there was a time in history where they did vote red. Just saying.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But in 1972, when Nixon won 49 states, the one state he lost to McGovern was Massachusetts. The only reason I know that is because my dad turned 18 in 1972, and that's the first time he voted. And he couldn't believe that the only state that Nixon didn't win was Massachusetts, the state my dad lived in. His first time voting. So it was kind of like a buzzkill uh, for him at that particular moment. But I could tell you, living 50 miles from Massachusetts, guys, I could tell you that I mean, you're not seeing it outside of New England because regionally it doesn't affect you. There is no difference between Boston and Chicago and Portland right now. The only thing that's making it a little different is the mayor here just had a is on the precipice. She's in an election campaign, so she's not, going on CNN Orange Man bad because she's, this, she's just got through a very difficult Democrat primary. But there's no difference. I can tell you guys, I only go into the city a couple times a year now, and once we're there, we get out. We don't hang around at all. It's a filthy shithole. Okay, and it's gotten worse since the pandemic. So I am an expert at all things Massachusetts. Technically the state I was born in. It's not going Republican, guys. I could just tell you, anybody who's had, first of all, it's not even about being a Republican. Anybody that has money there has left. Okay, anybody who's got private money. I'm not talking about a government municipal job where you're overpaid. Those people are all staying. They've got no incentive to leave. And the trust fund people. But a guy like me, no way. I'm not rich, but I'm talking about people that have their own. They're not. That you have an LLC or for proprietorship. Massachusetts is the place where your fucking business goes to die, between the taxes and having to operate your business in the crime-infested suburbs of Boston. No, thank you. And the problem is all the politicians are very corrupt. There is no the reason why Boston doesn't get the ink that Chicago and Portland does, and New York, is because it's smaller. It's comparatively much smaller. So we don't have hundreds of thousands of Biden invaders. We only have tens of thousands in this part of New England. So, and here's the other thing. Those blue states New York is surrounded by blue states. Okay, you got even though Jersey might turn red. Okay, Oregon is surrounded by California and Washington, deep blue states. Illinois, you've got Minnesota right there. It's the liberal part of the Midwest. That's why it's proliferating. It dies on the mass border because New Hampshire's a constitutional. Everybody has guns up here. That's why you don't have any of the Venezuelans or Salvadorans going up to New Hampshire, because they're going to get their head blown off if they try that shit up there. And it's a 99% white state. So when you have a truckload of people from South America driving around a little town like Dublin, New Hampshire, where everybody's walking around with a gun, they're more calculating than that. So that's the differentiator. Uh, you're in Portland. You could run up to Seattle in a sanctuary city. You can run down to San Francisco in a sanctuary. You got multiple avenues of escape. You don't have that up here. Once you get out of the city of Boston, it's quite different. So that's the story, guys. Good conversation today. Appreciate you all. We talked about a lot of things. If you just popped in midway through this recording, I started talking about the tariffs again. That might be worth listening to. What did I tell you about gold and silver? By the way, somebody sent me a DM that if Trump sends a dividend of $1,000, what am I going to do with it? I think you know who you are. I think you were kind of half joking, but I'll give you my honest answer. You know what I'm going to do with that $1,000? Buy more silver coins with it. It's exactly what I'm going to do. This moment's finally come, guys. I really hope a lot of you bought silver and gold during the pandemic when it was relatively low, because you made the smartest investment. Meanwhile, Bitcoin is, what is it, gone down hovering around 100,000. I don't even know.
Gold just hit $4,000 an ounce.
More, Gunny. I think it's like 40. Yeah. So another DM here. Yeah. Okay. Let me just read this quick. So somebody sent me a DM that can't talk. They're at work. What are my predictions? Just like they didn't see my post yesterday, because I think by the end of 2026, gold will be 5,000 an ounce. Silver's going to be 100 an ounce. Why do I think silver's going to have more of a comparative? Silver's been suppressed a lot longer than gold. Gold has gone up and down in value, as is platinum, but silver's really been like a stagnant metal. Not since the early 80s. I think in the early 80s it was about this much as it is now. But then, I mean, then it's dropped. It was like $15 an ounce in '08. So, I mean, that just do the math. That wasn't even 20 years ago. So that's what I'm going to do with my $1,000 tariff dividend is I'm going to buy more because I can't buy gold with that. I'm going to buy more silver coins with that. And if you're smart, you will too. It's a very good store of wealth, and I've been sitting on a ton of it. So I did liquidate some of it. Some of it, not all of it, but eventually you have so much, it's just a pain in the ass to, you got to have it mobile, So when you've got tons and tons of it, it's not really, it becomes a kind of a pain to plan for, if you have you can put it in a fireproof safe all you want, but I've got it in mobile places so I can get it the fuck out of my garage or wherever it is, if it is in my garage. So anyway, guys, have a great day. Appreciate your
Hey,
comments.
Dad, my husband and I used to gold pan. Just saying.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's
Yeah,
that
very.
was a good investment of your time, I would say.
Yeah, we used to do a lot of gold prospecting. That's what we used to do for vacations. We'd take the RV, pack up the kids, go out to a claim we had, and yeah.
Gold is real money, guys. They've been using it for 10,000 years as going back to ancient Egypt as money. So people that tell you it's not practical money or it's not real money, they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, there have been wars fought over gold. There haven't been wars fought over Bitcoin. Not yet, anyway. And I have some of that too. I don't have a lot. I don't even have a Bitcoin. So that's fine. You spread your money out, but I'm not going to obsess about it. I am going to obsess about metal because it's paying off for me after, I can't even remember the first thing of coins I got. I think it was from my grandparents for like my first communion. So you're talking, I've had stuff since 1987, roughly. How old is that? Yeah, 87, we'll say. I've had shit that long that I've kept all through my childhood, my growing up as an adult. I've got silver coins that were minted in 1987 that I've had since second grade. So I still have them. Those I didn't sell those because they're in a packaging. So yeah, Gunny.
I just wanted to say real quick, during the pandemic, when they were screwing us all over worldwide, the countries weren't buying money. They were hoarding gold. They were buying gold. They were stuffing gold in their cellars and shit. That's what happened, because they knew that when we got through the pandemic, they need, number one, to support their own money, but to be able to control us. Because if the governments have the gold, then that means the people don't have the gold, so that at the end of the day, there's no exit for the people. There's no way out for the people. There's no way for the people to control their government, because their government, I won't say stole, but acquired the vast majority of gold. So if you can buy gold, buy it. If you can't afford it, go to your spend a Saturday and drive around to pawn shops and buy scrap gold. You can put scrap gold in your pocket and buy groceries if you have to. Shit like that. So it is very important. I understand that if you go back to the Great Depression, when the stock market crashed, why did it crash? Because the stock market made it really easy for everyday people to put all their money in paper. What is paper? It's fucking paper. There's no value to our paper. At the end of the day, there's only value in gold and silver and sometimes platinum if you can afford it. So if I'm not saying don't do the stock market, but if you can do both, do both. And if you can only do one, do metal.
Yeah, exactly. Good advice, Gunny, because you know, this people often talk about gold. This is the last thing I'm going to say, I promise. People often talk about gold in relation to a declining fiat dollar, like US dollar. Two things can be true at the same time, friends. And by the way, you don't want the US dollar to be any more of a weakened fiat than it already is. Trump is a fiat guy, okay? He likes the US dollar. I know he talks a lot about stable coin. Yeah, he's just acknowledging. And by the way, President Trump owns $8 million worth of Bitcoin. I don't know if you knew that. Not that he has people who do that for him, but he has $8 million worth of Bitcoin. So for him, it's a store of wealth, guys. People like that, billionaires, it's just diverse. It's not that they're like into it now. It's just that he's realizing that people invest a large sum of money in it globally and it can't be ignored. The United States can't not be a player in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. All right? That weakens our resolve and what we're able to do. So, but it doesn't mean that he's like a Bitcoin maxi or Eric Trump is more of is the crypto guy in the family. He likes that shit. He plays with it. He invests in it. But my advice to everybody would be do everything. Do the stock market. Buy gold and silver. I would say actually, Gunny, I would say buy platinum because they actually use platinum in things, right? Um, and there was a time when they were trading at scale, gold and platinum. Now platinum's about 1/4. I think it's about $1,600 an ounce. There's nothing wrong with buying 1 ounce platinum bars, guys. I mean, you're not going to make money like 2 months from now off of it, but I mean, what's the difference between that and your 401k at work where somebody you don't know is investing your money? What's the diff? Everything's a roll of the dice, but you can't win if you don't play. So play the game and play responsibly. You guys have a great day. Appreciate you all. Cheers. Bye bye.